Hello, I see everyone logging on. So we are going to give it just a little bit to let people come from the first session, and then we will start with introduction. So if y'all will just hang tight for a second, we will get started. All right, I saw the number. It's kind of gone a little stagnant there, so perfect. My name is Lexi Metter. I'm an assistant director with the University of Arkansas, and I am your moderator tonight for this panel. And I'm going to pass it on to Derek to let him introduce himself, and we will go around.
Howdy, everyone. I'm Derek Naito. I am one of the regional advisors in the Office of Admissions at Texas A&M University. I work here out of our Dallas-Fort Worth Prospective Student Center, which is located in Arlington.
Hello, my name is Angie. Sorry, I didn't know which one came next. My name is Angie Alama. I am with Loyola University Chicago, and like Derek, I am regionally located here in the DFW Metroplex.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lacey Patterson, and I am the Texas Regional Admissions Counselor for the University of Iowa, also based here in the DFW area.
Thanks, y'all. So this is the pre-professional panel. So as you're going to notice, the chat has been turned off and we are utilizing the Q&A box. I have some pre-submitted questions that I'm going to walk through, but if you think of a question, put it in the chat box. Keep it pretty generic so that any one of our panelists can answer it. So no school-specific questions if possible. But we're going to start this out with, can I major in pre-med, pre-health, pre-law, or pre-vet? Anyone wants to take it?
Yeah, I guess I'll take it. So technically those aren't majors. They may possibly be at certain schools. But I would caution you to take one of those if it was actually a major. In most cases, as a student that was interested in one of those routes, you're choosing a major off of the list of majors at your college or university that kind of closely pertains to what you're wanting to study. There is no specific major for like law school students, for example, so you can choose really almost anything. Usually a student that's looking for pre-med or pre-health or pre-vet is usually majoring in something along in the sciences usually.
Anyone have anything to add?
Yeah, I'll echo what Derek said, but also bring up the fact that the reason why you cannot major in a pre-professional study is because you can't just be a pre-something and be a pre-doctor if you think about it that way. You would want your doctor to make sure they're going through the proper schooling and proper then residency and experience before they're able to treat you. So those first 4 years as an undergraduate is critical for your success, giving you those foundational skills, may it be in the science-related fields, may it be in writing, speaking. All of these are quintessential skills that will help you be a better professional. And also, you're a young person, so it's important to have life experiences, which will help you be a better than professional as you go on to your education.
All right, moving on. What should I major in? And can you explain the prerequisites needed in an undergrad before going on to a graduate level program?
I'll take this one. When it comes to pre-professional majors, I'm going to use the example of a lot of students want to go the pre-med track. And typically, and it's pretty much up to the student because you can technically major in anything and go on and take the MCAT, be admitted to medical school, but the vast majority of them, primarily because the MCAT involves so much science, so much math, that those students typically major in a science or math curriculum. Occasionally we'll get students that go outside of that, but for the most part, they tend to stick with the math or science curriculum. But in addition to that, most students, they're going to have to meet the requirements for their core curriculum as well as their major requirements. So when I'm talking to students about classes that they'll need to take in undergrad. You'll of course declare a major, and then you have to meet the requirements for that major along with like core classes that are kind of like an extension of the high school classes that you've taken, but just at a collegiate level. So that includes like, you know, math, science, English classes. You may have like, you know, an ethics class here or there, psychology class, but it's going to be at the collegiate level. And so when we think about your degree in its entirety, to get a degree, for instance, in biology, you not only have to meet those core curriculum requirements, but you also have to meet major requirements for that only people who major in biology will have to take. Now, combined, when we think about all of that, it's going to usually be at least a minimum of 120 credit hours, which sounds like a lot, but basically it's like a full load of classes over your 4 years. And so when we talk about the difference between an undergraduate degree and a graduate degree, you must meet those requirements and, you know, get that undergraduate degree before you can go on to medical school, to veterinary school, all of those those professional schools.
Yeah, and I just want to add to that. You know, I get students here and there that are like, oh, you know, I want to go to medical school or pharmacy school or dental school, but I'm going to major in this or that as, you know, also as just a backup plan. And, you know, in my mind, I'm always like, okay, well, if you're already giving yourself this backup plan, then you're basically like telling yourself, oh, it's okay to be defeated in this process of competitive admissions. Like, if you don't, you know, necessarily give yourself the backup plan and keep thinking about that, I think that it'll help you kind of strive to go a little bit further. And then with my financial aid kind of background as well, another concern that I have for students, especially those that are on, you know, either federal or state financial aid programs, is that if you are taking classes outside of your major, the federal government's not going to pay for those classes. So you might have to come out of pocket to add those additional biology or chemistry classes. You know, if you're a business major, you might have to claim a minor to be able to kind of get that, you know, put together. But in, you know, in some cases that might not be an option depending on where you go to school. So again, I would really caution you if you are, you know, thinking I'm going to go and have a major in a completely different thing than, you know, what most pre-med students or pre-dental students are taking, just because you don't want to be like negatively impacted, at least even on a financial aid, you know, perspective. And I think that's important for some students, especially because coming out of pocket for science classes can be quite pricey with labs and whatnot.
All right. What is some advice that you would give students and their families starting the college search process?
I think it's important when you are looking at going on to a professional school, maybe medical, dental, vet, physician's assistant, pharma. I mean, it can go on, right? There's so many really strong programs out there that it's good to look at programs that have the undergraduate advising component, not just going in like, not to talk about Iowa, but we don't have a vet school at Iowa. So when I get students coming to me and they're like, I want pre-vet, I'm like, well, I was good at working on humans, the human side. But when it comes to animals, I would encourage you to look elsewhere. And it's not that I don't think that we have the courses, but we don't have the right advising. And so I think it's really important when you're looking at undergraduate programs that you look to see who has advising and also who has really good opportunities for you to either get research opportunities, internship opportunities, job shadowing, and real life experience, because many of our programs at the professional level require so many hours of experience before you can even apply to the graduate level program. And that doesn't include your classroom experience. This is external experience. And so when you're looking at programs, I think it's good to ask the hard questions, ask your admissions advisor, admissions counselor. You're just meeting a bunch of us through DARN, right? There's over 70 of us out here that can help you and say, what advising can you provide me? What sort of external opportunities are available for me? And those are things that you should really think about.
I guess I would also want to double check too, I guess probably as you get further along in the process, looking at maybe some of the potential, medical schools, dental schools, veterinary schools, pharmacy schools that you're looking at, go on their website, look to see what the required courses are, and look to see if you can figure out if those courses are offered at the college or university that you're thinking about. Because if they're not, you're going to have to find another way to take those courses. And that could be a little bit of a challenge. So definitely check to see like what are those prerequisites. I'm just going to throw this out there just because I know that I'm the only one really representing a university that has a veterinary school. But like our veterinary school, their website that they have actually has every single Texas college and university on there, and what classes are needed at that college or university to meet the prerequisite requirements. And I think a few of them on there actually say like you're going to have to go outside of this school to be able to get these additional classes, but this is what's required at the school that, for you to be able to take it and meet our prerequisites for veterinary school.
Thanks. So what resources are available to help students prepare for a graduate program? You've kind of touched on them, but can we elaborate?
Absolutely. We have a number of different, and when I say we, I'm not just talking about Loyola Chicago. Most universities have advising teams that tend to be great resources for finding out about next steps beyond undergraduate study. I know that at Loyola specifically, we actually start having students work with departmental faculty starting their junior year, primarily because, you're already fully enmeshed in that major, but also because they're a great resource for finding out about next steps beyond undergrad, because they themselves have their own graduate degrees. We also have some separate academic advisors that help specifically with pre-professional school admission. And they're a wonderful resource. They actually start working with students as early as freshman year, particularly when it comes to medical school, because we have our own medical school, but also we understand the medical school's timeline starts well before you actually start applying. So we know that that's, heavy on students' minds as early as freshman year. So our pre-health advising committee start working with students pretty early on, not just to get admitted to our school, but pretty much any medical school in the country. And similar to what Derek mentioned, in that you kind of want to work backwards, in that you want to look at, if your goal medical school is like Harvard Med, for example, like you want to work backwards in that, look at what that school requires and then see whether or not your undergraduate school is offering those prerequisites. So you make sure that you kind of align like your long-term goals with like meeting those prerequisites and also getting the experience that you need. So when you're ready to apply to medical school, then you have all of your ducks in a row. Another thing that I would add is that typically with these advising groups, I know with our pre-health advising committee, they actually review your application with you. And we also have medical school students that work with students on the application process and in their statement of purpose, which is an integral part of that application process. Just so like by the time, because all of us can say like it definitely does a lot for our numbers. So it works for both ways. We want you to get into medical school, which is helping you achieve your goal, but it also works in our favor, the number of students we're able to help get admitted to professional schools. So helping you actually helps us as well. And when we help you to get admitted to the school, like, those numbers obviously speak well to our university. So we're take full advantage of what those advising offices can do for you as far as taking you through that whole application process, because that's what they're there for.
Anything to add? We good? Okay, so not all universities track their acceptance rate into graduate programs. Will I still be able to get into a competitive program if I go to a school that does not track their acceptance rate?
I guess I can start. Our pre-med program does not track, and we have one of the top medical programs in the nation. So a lot of this is hard to track because you are not required to be a pre-med, a pre-vet, a pre-PA student at most schools. Okay, there are some schools that may have different things, but especially the bigger state-funded public institutions may not track, and students are still accepted to those programs. So it's hard to give a realistic answer. Like, we could track, and just those students who went through that program, and our acceptance rate would be pretty awesome. But we also have to consider the students who did not go through those, which would skew our numbers. So we need to be honest with how we're presenting that. I think you can look into graduate schools. You can see almost every program will show where the students came from. They have a listing of who was accepted to their who was accepted to the program. Where are they from? What are the average GPAs? What's the mean GPA? How many average hours were volunteered? Like, all of this information is, for most universities, published. I know that we publish all of our data for students once it's available. And so it adds, I know that it's right now we're looking at this college search process, as 16, 17, and 18-year-olds, and to imagine this continuing, but it really does. If you're looking at a graduate program, take what we're doing now and amplify it, because that's what we're doing with graduate school. But it's okay. It's important because this is a huge investment in your future. So I think the biggest thing to do is to ask questions and to start researching even now, with what you're doing. It's okay to ask those questions. I know most programs will even have like high school or preparatory lectures about how to get in, because we want students who are prepared. All of our programs do. We want to help families. That's our job. That's why we're in admissions. That's why we're in higher education, because we believe in this process and we want to help students be their very best. So I think it's keep this practice, what you're doing right now, and continue it as you go through your undergrad to your graduate programs.
Yeah, I would say, so we do track, at least from undergrad into medical schools, into dental schools, and also into vet school and possibly pharmacy school. We do track our applicants. The only caveat to that is kind of like along the lines of what Lacey said, is that when the student's applying, they have the option to choose if they want to share that information or not with their college or university. So we can only track the students that have opted in to share with us. And so out of those that we track, then we can break down the statistics of, what schools were they accepted to, what was their average MCAT score, what was their science GPA, what was their overall GPA. So we can track all those items, and they're published on our website for anybody to look at. We're not afraid, to hide any of those. Some other schools either, might not have the ability to track, or they, don't have an office that's willing to put all that information together perhaps, or they just don't even get any of that information in some cases from the medical school application process or dental school application process. So yeah, I wouldn't feel defeated if you go to a school that doesn't have those statistics published. But what I would do, like kind of what Lacey said, take it another step further, look at the medical schools or dental schools or whatever law schools that you're applying to see where the student's coming from for that program. And that kind of might help you determine where you should be looking at possibly for undergrad.
All right. And the last question that I have for you guys, is there anything that we didn't really touch on in our 20 minutes here that you feel that we should know in terms of pre-professional programs? Anything that you feel?
I always like to talk to high school students about the importance of your high school curriculum and how that can really lead a path of success for you once you get to college. For example, the biggest conversation, the two biggest things I talk about is language, world language. Did you only take 2 years to graduate, or did you go through the 4th year? For many schools, if you go through a 4th year, that could lead to, in high school, then that can either lead towards meeting a world language requirement for your core requirements in college, so you don't have to worry about language and you can focus more on your biological sciences, chemistry, those physics courses, those hard courses that you're going to need for your graduate program. So that's something to really consider, is looking at your high school plan. Look at your world languages if you're able to. Another one is your science plan. making sure that you're taking the harder level sciences. I see students often, if you're able to get into a physics course or a high level science course, again, that's also going to give you a strong foundation so that you're able to get into that higher level chemistry or physics or biology course that you're going to need then for those higher level courses. So keeping the rigor strong in high school is important, and also not getting caught up on thinking I need to get as many college courses done in high school. The reason for this is often many of our programs, especially if you're looking at a rigorous preparatory program for PA school, for med school, for vet school, they're going to have you take those courses at their university because anatomy and physiology, for example, is probably one of the ones that we get the most often. It's a different level of competitiveness and rigor at a college than it will be in a high school or a community college. So I think it's being smart about the classes that you're taking and challenging yourself.
Yeah, and I would say kind of along the same lines with AP and IB courses. I mean, it's great that you're taking those classes. I highly support you taking the tests for them as well. But keep in mind that if you're just going to take credit for some of those classes, especially if you're looking at a pre-health program and you're taking math and science courses, AP or IB, part of your evaluation for medical school, pharmacy school, dental school is your science and math GPA. And so if you're just taking credit for those classes, that can't be factored in there. And therefore, it's placing you at a disadvantage compared to other applicants because they're taking those classes at their college and they have grades associated with them. I mean, I would say even in some cases, you may even be disqualified, like an automatic denial if you don't have a grade for Bio 1 and Bio 2 or Chem 1 and Chem 2 because you took an AP credit for it. So while I think it's important that you take those classes, especially because it's going to help prepare you for that college level math and science, just be aware, prepare to be a little bit disappointed as you go in that, your academic advisor at whatever institution you go to is like, yeah, while this is great that you got a 5 on the, AB and BC calculus tests, like that's great, but these courses really need to be taken here because we need a grade associated with them. So, just be aware of that you've got to have those components in there, especially if you're wanting to be competitive. Taking the easy way out and just collecting credit, that's not what we want. I don't want a doctor working on me in surgery that took the easy way out. And think about that. I mean, you don't want that. So, just prepare yourself for some of those things that, while you're taking those harder classes is good. But, you may not be taking the credit for them at the college level because there's no grade. And I guess just one last thing too that I would say is, I get a lot of students that are really hung up about the major that they choose and whatnot. I would really just say, it's sometimes really not even about the major. It's really just about you as the person and just making sure that whatever program you're in undergrad, that you're getting what you need prerequisite wise to be able to apply to the programs that you're looking at. And we didn't talk a whole lot about pre-law, but pre-law, it doesn't matter what you major in because there's no prerequisites for law school except that you need a bachelor's degree and that you have to take the LSAT. So major in something that you're interested in, major in something that you're going to enjoy studying over the next 4 years, and then do the things that you need to be doing in those 4 years to make yourself competitive in the law school admissions process.
Awesome. And I think we've got time for one more question that was sent to me. So volunteer hours are so critical to students in the pre-med program. Can anyone speak to how pre-med programs are adapting to the lack of hands-on volunteer opportunities currently available in hospitals and doctor offices due to COVID?
I'll take this question. We've actually had that experience a lot with some of our student ambassadors who work in our Office of Undergraduate Admissions, and they're really concerned because they're preparing to apply to our Stritch School of Medicine, and they're like, well, where can I go to get volunteer hours? The admissions committee with Stritch, they've been really accommodating because they understand, like, if those hours aren't available due to COVID, then obviously we shouldn't penalize the students for that. Also, a lot of our partner hospitals have provided our students with different virtual volunteering opportunities, such as like calling and checking on patients and things like that. And granted, it doesn't give you like the hands-on experience that a lot of medical schools would typically look for. But again, even outside of Stritch, like as our students are applying to medical schools everywhere, a lot of those schools have been really lenient when it comes to the type of contact hours that students are getting because of the restrictions that are beyond their control. One of our students actually shared with us like one kind of unique way that she's been able to get experience. She's actually been volunteering with the COVID vaccines. And so they don't require a lot of like prerequisites and stuff like that. Prerequisites, what am I saying? A lot of experience in healthcare environments to be able to get that kind of experience. So she's been able to accumulate a lot of hours locally in Chicago just by volunteering at different vaccination sites. So I don't know how feasible that is for a lot of students who are looking to get that kind of experience, but you kind of have to become creative in these times. But I found that as we've gone through this entire year that we've been in this pandemic now, that a lot more schools have been accommodating, and also a lot of healthcare facilities have kind of adjusted how they can field volunteer requests.
Yeah, I mean, and along those same lines, we've had students that signed up to be contact tracers on our campus. And that's all volunteer work. And so there were students that were able to log, a lot of hours volunteering for that, volunteering at our testing kiosks as well. Even if it's just running the labs back and forth between the kiosk and the truck, like we need volunteers for all those programs. So while it might not be, I'm in a hospital, following a doctor around or something like that, anything that's kind of health or public health related, really counts towards that. And the other thing I'll, just want to add is that we're not going to be in this forever. Most of our campuses are going back to more of a normal kind of in-person, schedule for the fall. So, eventually down the road, things will be, open, for you to be able to participate in. And I mean, especially if you're a junior right now, I mean, probably by the time that you start college, hopefully we'll be in a much better place, if not even in anywhere near the place that we're in even right now, for you to be able to go back in and do those clinical, volunteer hours and whatnot.
All right, thank you guys. And I am going to kind of conclude our evening here, as the next panel does start at 7:30. And I want to give you guys time to get over there if you're joining it. I did just post the link back in the chat box to It's Okay to Be Undecided, Picking a College Major panel. It does start at 7:30. I want to thank you guys for joining us this evening, and then ultimately thank our panelists for giving us such great information. We hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to reach out if you have any questions, and have a good night.